What if the trade war between Canada and the United States escalates beyond control? What would it mean for businesses, consumers, and the economies of both nations? The two countries have long been each other's largest trading partners, deeply connected through supply chains and commerce. But when political tensions rise, trade policies can shift dramatically, and the impact could be devastating on both sides of the border. Trade disputes between Canada and the U.S. are nothing new. For decades, disagreements over softwood lumber, dairy regulations, and aluminum tariffs have caused friction. But if these tensions explode into a full-scale trade war, the consequences could be severe. Canadian exporters in key industries like automotive, energy, and agriculture would suddenly face steep tariffs, making their products significantly more expensive in the U.S., with so many industries depending on cross-border supply chains. Production costs would skyrocket, leading to delays and potential layoffs. American businesses that rely on Canadian oil, minerals, and manufactured goods would also suffer. Small and medium-sized businesses, the backbone of both economies, could struggle to survive, and some might be forced to shut down entirely. Higher tariffs mean higher prices for consumers, and that effect would be felt quickly. Grocery store shelves would see price hikes on common goods like meat, dairy, and produce. Everyday household appliances, electronics, and even vehicles could become more expensive due to disrupted supply chains and increased import costs. Canadian retailers would be hit hard, struggling with rising costs for U.S. imports. Meanwhile, American shoppers would feel the pinch when buying Canadian goods like maple syrup, lumber, and electric vehicle batteries. Inflation could surge in both countries, reducing purchasing power and slowing economic growth, making life more difficult for families already dealing with the rising cost of living. Financial markets wouldn't escape the fallout. Investors react poorly to uncertainty, and a prolonged trade war would introduce significant instability. The Canadian dollar could weaken against the U.S. dollar, making imports more expensive but boosting exports. Stock markets would become increasingly volatile as industries brace for potential economic downturns and declining investor confidence. This uncertainty could discourage investment, making it harder for businesses to expand or recover. As companies lose access to critical markets and supply chains remain disrupted, the long-term consequences could reshape entire industries. Beyond economics, a trade war would put strain on diplomatic relations between the two nations. Canada and the U.S. are not just trade partners, they are allies that collaborate on security, environmental policies, and cultural exchanges. A major economic standoff could disrupt cooperation in these areas, leading to unintended political consequences. If trust erodes between leaders, it could impact everything from border security to joint military operations. In the worst-case scenario, tensions could spill over into broader geopolitical conflicts, further complicating an already delicate situation. Recent tensions have already begun to surface. The U.S. has criticized Canada's digital services tax, arguing that it unfairly targets American tech companies. In response, Canada has raised concerns over U.S. subsidies for electric vehicles, which could disadvantage Canadian automakers. Additionally, long-standing disputes over dairy quotas and softwood lumber remain unresolved, adding fuel to an already tense situation. As both countries prepare for upcoming elections, protectionist policies could become an even bigger focus, making negotiations even more difficult. The U.S. is also considering imposing new tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, citing national security concerns. This has sparked warnings from Canadian officials who argued that such measures would harm both economies and lead to retaliatory action. Meanwhile, energy disputes continue as Canada seeks to expand its oil exports, facing resistance from U.S. environmental policies. These policy clashes only add to the uncertainty, making it harder for businesses to plan for the future. Is there a way out? Historically, trade disputes have been resolved through negotiation. It's often through frameworks like the World Trade Organization and the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. The big question now is whether political leaders will prioritize economic stability over protectionist policies, or if tensions will continue to escalate. If both sides refuse to compromise, businesses and consumers will bear the brunt of the fallout. However, if diplomacy prevails, there's still hope for a resolution that avoids long-term damage. One thing is certain: a worsening trade war would hurt businesses, workers, and consumers on both sides of the border. The economies of Canada and the US are deeply intertwined, meaning damage to one will inevitably affect the other. Policymakers will have to decide whether short-term political gains are worth the long-term economic pain. If the trade war escalates, there will be no real winners, only economic losses that both countries will struggle to recover from. What are your thoughts? How will a trade war affect you?